Are you a farmer or butcher ready to master direct-to-consumer marketing and meet success? Then you're in the right place. I'm Jared Aachen, the founder of Chop Local. Each episode of this podcast features interviews with farmers and butchers who have built successful direct-to-consumer meat businesses, and they're going to share their secrets for success with you. From actionable tips to inspiring stories, this podcast has ingredients you will need to succeed in the meat business. After the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on social. And check out the rest of our educational resources at choplocaluniversity.com. Now, let's turn it over to my business partner, Katie, to get started.
Hi, I'm Sarah Scott, Story Brand Certified Guide, and I am super excited to work with Chop Local University to be offering a Story Brand Framework mini course. So we are going to have for 4 weeks in May, each Tuesday in May, a 4-week course on learning the Story Brand Framework. This is critical to growing your sales and your marketing success with your business. You're going to learn real-time application to see how you can create the best message for your best customer and attract more of those customers. So please join us in May for the Story Brand mini course. Be sure to check out the link offered to get registered today.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Meet Success podcast. I'm your host, Katie Olthoff, the co-founder of Chop Local and Chop Local University. And I'm excited today to talk with my guest, Sarah Zastrow, about something that is not necessarily marketing related, but it affects all of us on the farm. And I think especially business owners, when some of our audience is butcher shops, most of our audience is selling their meat direct to consumer, and I feel like that adds another level to things. And so we are talking about stress on the farm today with Sarah. Sarah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Katie. I'm so excited to be here and dive into this topic.
Sarah actually is a certified exercise physiologist, but she's also a mental health advocate and really knowledgeable about both farm life and mental health and how those things intertwine. So, Sarah, tell us a little bit just about how you kind of got interested in this topic or got into it.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Katie. I grew up on a farm, and my dad always said, don't marry a farmer. And I was like, okay, Dad, whatever. Like, I hate shoveling manure. I'm never going to marry a farmer. And so then, a few years later, I did exactly that. But I did come back to the same area, so he was happy because grandbabies are, close by. So it's funny, though, because the reason that he didn't want me to marry a farmer was because of the stress, right? Farming takes a toll on your body and specifically your mental health. And what I love to study is how those two things are related. So after college, I started working with cancer patients and teaching exercise, teaching nutrition, specifically for people who have a lot of food issues, teaching scar tissue mobilization and some kind of wellness adjacent classes. And I started teaching, then I kind of moved from that to other, what we call special populations. So these classes for people who've had strokes or Parkinson's disease or diabetes or things like that. And really did that until COVID. And at that point, I was kind of burnt out and kind of done. And I really wanted to have a baby. And I also really was tired of working with older people, not for any particular reason or anything against them. It's just sad, and I just was getting really burnt out and really sad. And so anyway, I always knew I wanted to work with farmers though, and COVID was the perfect opportunity to kind of pivot. And so I started talking about farm stress and what I had learned when working with all these different people with this common problem, whether it's diabetes or cancer or Parkinson's disease or whatever, is when a person does not manage their stress effectively, that disease across the board is worse. The side effects of the medication are worse. The treatment of the disease is not as successful. Their quality of life is worse. And it comes down to people who have an effective way to manage stress, manage their lives better. And so I knew this, and I had worked a lot with people with chronic pain and different things like that. And I kind of took that same principle to farmers, to my dad, to my husband, to my husband's grandparents, and started diving into like, what can farmers do with essentially no time and no money, right? Because I don't know any farmer with a lot of time or a lot of money to manage their stress in a way that farming is not going to literally kill them. And I know that that sounds dramatic, but I say that, and my dad, so we're all on the same page, my dad died of a heart attack at 64 years old, just dropped dead one day. So I come from a very different perspective of most people, and I know that people want to hear how they can better their lives in a way that doesn't take a lot of time and that's free, because quality of life and ensuring that you're around to watch those babies grow up is the most important thing. And most of us don't do a great job at that.
To be fair, it's hard, you know? So you mentioned two things. My mom has chronic pain and she has Parkinson's disease. She was diagnosed about almost 2 years ago now. And I've been taking her to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and doing her appointments with her and stuff like that. And they have said essentially the same thing. I mean, one thing that I love about the Mayo Clinic is that they have been really focused on what they can help with, not necessarily behavioral change for her. But when we saw the doctor that specialized in pain management, one of the things that he talked about was stress. And the first thing that came to my mind when you started talking about that is they've really focused in on her with her sleep. They want her to get better quality sleep, which I am someone who tends towards being stressed. I have some anxiety, that sort of thing. And I know that sleep also helps me. So sleep, I just brought that one up for you because that is one that for me personally, if I'm not getting good quality sleep and if I'm not getting enough sleep, and I think about farmers this time of year, it's planting season, they are running hard, or during calving season when they are up, like, please tell me that I'm correct and that sleep does play a part.
You are 1,000% correct, Katie. Okay, so sleep does a number of things. Number one, obviously, it makes us crabby, okay? Number two, it changes our perception of pain. So both, we do not tolerate pain as well, and our perception of pain is worse when we don't have enough sleep. So particularly for people who have chronic low back pain or have Parkinson's disorder or just get headaches frequently, when we have less sleep, we are irritable, we have more pain, our tolerance to pain is less, and the whole thing doesn't work as well. The other thing is when you get bad sleep, you get bad sleep. And again, and again, and again, and again. And so it's hard to break that cycle because it's so pattern specific. But I will tell you, the most common reason for people to have sleep issues is stress.
Like just such a cycle that you can't break out of, because I was having that issue too. Actually, I did it last night. Laid awake for a while thinking about something work related, honestly. If you guys want to know and you listen to last week's episode, I was thinking about our upcoming Story Brand course that we're hosting. And then even once I fell back to sleep, I had dreams that Sarah, that's teaching the course, that Sarah and I, not this Sarah that I'm talking to today, the Sarah that I talked to last week, that Sarah Scott and I were trying to get together to have a meeting to iron out some details. But the place where we were going to have a meeting, it was actually homecoming and they were playing a football game inside of the, like it was just this ridiculous dream. But I'm not sleeping well because I'm stressed. But if I was sleeping well, it would help my stress. It never ends, it feels like.
Okay, so I started doing this year and it has revolutionized my world. Okay, the first question is, what is the story that we tell ourselves about sleep? Okay, since you guys are doing Story Brand Framework, who's the hero here? I'll tell you right now, the hero is sleep. The hero is my bed. I am the stupid fool who has no idea what I'm doing. The hero is my bed. I want to be with that person all the time, right? Now, with sleep, when we lay in bed and we replay these stories, like you had mentioned, Katie, our brain has to do a little bit of that. It's called closing the loop. We have to finish those things. We have to finish those thoughts. But there comes a point, and we've all hit that point, where like, okay, I've done that 40 or 50 times today. It's time to put it down, right? So at that point, pick up a notebook, write it down, close the notebook in a really dramatic fashion. So you hear the like, right? And literally like throw it away, throw it outside, go put it in your car. You have to have some physical, like, I am done with this. And that makes a huge difference. And then every time that thought pops into your head, like, oh, wait, what about our meeting at the homecoming parade, whatever. Then you imagine that notebook just clapping shut, and then you fling it across the room. Just not that you actually do that, but imagine that every time that thought pops into your head, because what you're doing is training your neuroplasticity to stop rethinking about the same things over and over again. Okay. The other thing, I am a person who I have trouble falling asleep. I have trouble staying to sleep. And then I had a couple of babies who never slept. I have not had a good night's sleep in 5 years. Okay.
I totally understand, but mine's been like 17, it feels like. So.
Dang it. I was hoping you would say it's done now.
No. For the parents out there, it does get better. It does get better. It's just when you keep having kids that it continues on. And then I swear my nervous system, like, I am such a light sleeper, and it's like I'm still listening for those babies. Yes. And I want to hear your tips, and then I'm going to tell you what I did recently that has changed and helped things a lot. So, okay, keep going, Sarah.
Okay, so I started listening to meditations every single night when I go to sleep. And then I started I really like a body scan meditation. And there's this guy named Chibzo Karake. I have no idea do you do that too?
No, I just like a week and a half ago downloaded the Calm app, and I paid for a subscription. I don't remember, it's a few dollars a month or something like that. And I haven't been listening to the meditations often, but I've been listening to them when I can't sleep. And Chibs O'Carrick, whatever his name is, I think he's Australian. The other day, I was at a conference in Salt Lake City, and we did some hiking. We hiked up a mountain, and I was like, oh, this will be okay. It was a hill, whatever, but I was exhausted afterwards. I was dying. The group that I was with, like, I made it a few minutes, and I was like, go ahead, guys. I'm going to sit on this rock and look for fossils in the dirt. Anyway, I couldn't sleep that night, and so I had Chibs. Chibs led me on another mountain hike. This one was in Mexico, and I was laying there like, this isn't working. And then all of a sudden I woke up, and it was like, I woke up in the morning, and I was like, when did I fall asleep? Like, it was amazing. So anyway.
I love Chibs. Yeah. Okay. So literally same thing, except for I just listened to him on YouTube. That's a good tip about the Calm app. And yeah, so the other thing with the meditation is that, and he does hypnosis for sleep and meditation.
And you can just find that on YouTube. I don't even have to pay for that. Aha. Okay, cool.
And some of them are really intense. And he'll say, like, start with a meditation, like a guided visualization, a body scan, whatever, like hiking the mountain, like you said. And now I'm to the point where, like, I just listen to Chib say, relax your body, sleep.
That's what he sounds like, too. I love it.
It's amazing. And I just listen to it every night. And it's one of those things where the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I am just dead to the world. The other thing is I got a CPAP. Okay. And the reason I am telling you this, I used to be embarrassed about it, but listen, I put my little elephant trunk on, and listen, I am dead to the world. And there are so many people that need CPAPs and don't get them because it's embarrassing and they don't want to like sleep with a CPAP with their partner. Nope, my husband and I both put that elephant trunk on, boom, we're dead to the world. And so if you're not getting enough oxygen at night, you are going to feel like garbage every single day. You're going to have brain fog, you're going to have headaches, it will lead to all different kinds of issues. So
not to mention it puts stress on your heart. And again, this is not just about your feelings either. It's about like your actual physical health too.
Exactly. So anyway, that's what I've started doing this year. Got a CPAP and started letting Chibs just lull me to sleep every single night. It's amazing.
I'm going to tell you what I did beyond the Calm app. And I got to preface this by saying there are some real concerns about using AI for mental health purposes. I will start that out by saying that I've mentioned on this podcast before that AI really loves to kind of reinforce your own thoughts or opinions. And so there have been concerns where if someone is talking to AI, like talking to ChatGPT and saying like, I'm really stressed and my life sucks, I'm thinking about hurting myself, ChatGPT can actually be like, yeah, it does sound like your life sucks. You should do that. Something like, that's a very oversimplification, but I just want to put that out there since I'm mentioning AI and mental health, that like this is a concern. Please don't talk to AI about your mental health. However, that being said, I did ask AI for help with my sleep. And I said specifically, I want, can you help me with cognitive behavioral therapy for sleep, which CBT is a therapy framework that people use really to help kind of change their thoughts around different things. Okay. And so ChatGPT did walk me through it, asked me a ton of questions about my sleep and about my specific sleep issues. And like I mentioned, one of them was that I am like constantly alert in the middle of the night listening for my babies, even though my youngest baby is 9 years old. There's something in there that is still like, you have to listen for the babies. They might need you, And so ChatGPT coached me to tell myself that being awake in the night or, like not being able to fall asleep is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous, right? Everybody in my house is safe. We are not in danger. So I don't need to be on high alert. And so I actually tell myself this all the time now when I get anxious. You are not being chased by tigers, Katie. You are reacting as if you are in mortal danger, but you are not. This is an uncomfortable situation. It is not an unsafe situation. And at first I was like, this sounds like garbage, can I really? Within a couple of weeks, I started sleeping so much better. And now I'm sleeping through the night most of the time. And if there's a noise that wakes me up, I'm going right back to sleep because I'm not getting like this anxiety reaction over it.
Yes. And when we change our framework around what we tell ourselves related to sleep, it changes so many things. And there's a lot of people who think like, they're again with these mindset things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'll sleep when the work is done. I'll sleep in the winter time. I'll sleep whatever. That stuff is keeping you from sleeping. And you think, oh, it's just a thought. Yeah, it's just a thought. But our thoughts program our brain, and your thoughts are programming your brain to not sleep. So just like you said, Katie, figure out what's a way you can reframe that so that you're able to sleep, right? So I really like I'm a person who, like what I say to myself is, if my brain is not sleeping, at least my body is resting. I would get up and do stuff, which I think is good for some people. And it was good for me for a while, but then I would just be working all night long. I'm going to clean my house. I'm going to record a podcast episode. I'm going to do this. I'm going to organize my desk. And then I'm exhausted mentally and physically. And then I'm like, okay, I need to go lay down, because even if my brain is still awake, at least my body is resting.
I did read that recently too, though. Even if you lay down for a short nap and you feel like you're not actually falling asleep, it is still restorative to your brain and body to just rest also. So
if you're a person who can't sleep because you're restless, check your iron.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Sarah, restless legs. So my mom deals with that too. And the sleep and she tried a CPAP machine 14 years ago and couldn't tolerate it. It caused more problems. But she is going to be trying one again. And I will say there are a lot of new models out there. They don't all go all the way over your nose. They're a lot different. And so she's going to be trying that. And also they did check her ferritin levels, especially women. Ask for your ferritin levels to get checked. Mine recently, I got mine checked. And it was 12. I think that it's that 10 to 100, I think, is what they consider normal. But my doctor said she wants mine over 100. And I have restless legs at night too. And so I am working on getting my iron levels up. I'm eating a lot of beef, but I am also taking a supplement too. So
Good.
Oh man, we could talk about this forever. I do think though, when we're talking about things that you have some control, I know it's hard to access services. I know that maybe going and talking to a therapist is really hard. I know that there are times when you do have to get the seeds in the ground at the right time, but I think some sleep is one of those things that we can all probably do a little bit better job at, and it doesn't take a long time to really feel a difference in both physically and mentally with your stress level.
The other thing is, okay, so we have all different types of stress in our lives, right? We have short-term stress. I got to get the seeds in the ground. I've got to get this water fixed. I've got to get whatever, this, that, and the other thing done. We have short-term stress. And then we also sometimes have longer-term stress, right? This political climate and the markets and the price of fertilizer and my mom is aging and whatever. The kids are having trouble at school, right? So we have short-term things. We have long-term things. Either way, the way that we can manage that stress specifically before bed determines how we will sleep that night and wake up the next day. So a couple things that will really help. The things that we already mentioned, right? CPAP, iron levels, but stretching before bed is one of the best things that you can do because it literally is going to take the adrenaline and the cortisol in your body and use it, okay? Like I think of Pac-Man, right? My body's dumping in cortisol and adrenaline all day long, and stretching is what triggers our muscles to uptake that adrenaline, uptake that cortisol, uptake all this stuff and use it, right? So I'm not saying you need to exercise after your 14-hour day in the field, right? But go home and just relax and stretch. Put your legs up the wall. If you don't know what legs up the wall is, it's like a yoga pose, but don't worry, it's not weird or anything. You just literally swing your legs over the back of the couch. It's easy peasy. And then do a stretch, do a little twist, reach out and touch your toes, right? Stretch your back for God's sakes. And what that's going to do is first of all, it's going to relax all of your muscles, okay? It's going to trigger to your body, it is time to relax. It is time to rest. And just like you said, Kitty, I am not in danger. I am safe. And so it relaxes your body. You'll sleep deeper. It uses up that adrenaline so that you're able to calm down off of your stressful day. And that is regardless of if it's short-term stress, if it's long-term stress, if it's anxiety that you had over the last 30 years, stretch before bed.
I love this tip because some of the other tips that you hear a lot about stress management are like, move your body. A lot of farmers are moving their body. They're lifting heavy things. Like they are, my husband gets more steps in doing chores every day than I could ever imagine doing. So he's doing plenty of moving his body. Another tip that we hear all the time is like, get outside, get some sunshine. Again, my middle son says that he is solar powered and he has to get a certain amount of sunshine in order to feel good. And I'm like, yes, we are all solar powered. We all need a certain amount of sunshine, but again, that's something like farmers are like, check, been outside today, So it's a slightly different way that you're moving your body that most of us, especially farmers, are probably not, they don't have a yoga regimen, right? But I like the idea of doing it before bed to both decrease those stress hormones and get you ready, feel safe, feel relaxed, get ready to get in bed and listen to our friend Chibs do his meditation with his beautiful, deep Australian accent. So let's talk about the difference. You mentioned there's these short-term stressful events, and then there's these longer-term chronic stress type things where it is just kind of the nature of the beast of living on a farm. There's always going to be chronic stress, or there's things out of your control, like you mentioned, like the markets or your input prices, which have risen, things like that. What about though, anxiety and depression? How are those different from stress?
Yes, let's kind of define this stuff so that we're all on the same page. First of all, I want you to think of anxiety as in feelings of anxiousness, okay? And I want you to think of depression as in feelings of sadness. And I know that's a way oversimplification of those terms and of those feelings, but just bear with me for a couple seconds here. Then I want you to think about how anxiousness and sadness exist on a spectrum, okay? And just so we are on the same page, anxiety and depression are spectrum disorders, meaning everybody is on a spectrum, and some people exist between a 1 or a 2 or a 3. Some people exist up to a 10, right? So we kind of have these, and I'm talking with my hands right now. So for those of you who are listening with earbuds, just imagine my hands like clapping together real quietly here. But most of us live on the spectrum, right? Everybody lives on the spectrum. Most people manage it fairly well. And at some point in their life, it sneaks up to a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10. For farmers, and for other people who have a lot of stress and who don't have a great outlet, for most of us, right, myself included, that we just exist at a higher number. We just exist at a higher level. And so for some people, that's okay. And for other people, that makes them uncomfortable and they manage it in different ways, okay? Now, I say that, right, because it's important to remember that we want to break down the stigma against mental health. Since everybody exists on this spectrum, there's no reason for there to be a stigma. There's no reason for you to have a stigma because you have eyeballs or feet. It is just a part of the human condition, right? Feelings of anxiousness and feelings of sadness just are part of being a human. The other thing is, we have the stages of grief, right? One of the stages of grief is depression. And the most common symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder is anxiety. So every single person, by definition, will deal with anxiety and deal with depression throughout their lives, right? So it's important to remember this happens to everybody. This is a spectrum. But sometimes we can use different tools in our toolbox to reduce our number on that spectrum. The other thing is that it's important that we are able to talk about this more often, talk about this with people who make us feel safe and heard and comfortable and not judged for it and not like, honey, you just need to pray, right? Like that's not helpful at all.
I mean, that is one of the common, you just need to pray. You just need to deal with it. You need to suck it up. I feel like there's so many or your life is great. Why would you feel that way? And like sometimes I think those feelings do start to get further towards one end of the spectrum. And sometimes you can tell it's because you recently had deaths in the family or there are really stressful circumstances going on, but sometimes it just happens, right? There's maybe your iron's low and you had no idea. Like there's other reasons. So
there's a ton of reasons. And oftentimes it's about 30 or 40 combined, right? It's not just my iron or just my sleep or just a death in the family. It's 58 things that are coming together that are making me feel like this cloud of doom is sitting on my chest and following me everywhere I go. And so a few things that we can do about that.
Wait. Before you get into that, sorry. One other thing that I want to discuss with you is that, like, I know you said that sadness and feelings of sadness and feelings of anxiousness is very oversimplifying it. But like for me, it really manifests a lot in irritability, losing my patience, and not wanting to be around people or sounds or, you know what I mean? Like maybe this part of the conversation fits in a little bit later, but I think it would be useful to point out, like, I don't typically, I don't cry a lot. I don't feel sad a lot, but that doesn't mean that my mental health hasn't deteriorated a little bit. It comes out for me differently. It comes out as irritability, lack of patience, and feeling like I'm not being productive enough or I'm not going to have time to get everything. But it's a different feeling.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about it now. I want us to think about, okay, so we know our anxiety, we know our depression exists on a spectrum. It happens for everybody. Sometimes it's a little worse. Sometimes it's a little better. Sometimes in different seasons or period of life, it's a little worse and better. I want you to think about your morning, okay? And I'm going to just illustrate for you in your head a volcano, okay? Now, when we wake up in the morning, I'll talk about my morning this morning, okay? My little guy woke me up 5:15, Mama! Right? And I hear it in the baby monitor and I'm like, right? And my body says, oh, you need a burst of energy to deal with this issue. Here's a burst of energy. And then I go, oh my gosh, it's 5:15. Oh gosh, that's way too early. Here's another burst of energy because you need to get up and tackle the day. And then I remember that I have to call the wood chipper people because they're whatever, having trees cut. Okay, here's another burst of energy to do that. And then you remember that you have to do X, Y, and Z. Here's another burst of energy. And what happens is that our body gives us energy in the form of adrenaline to address all these issues. Okay, so I want you to picture a volcano, very simplified version. Our body goes boom, 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 and gives us these bursts of energy to climb up the volcano. And what we don't realize is that we are going up and we are going closer to the explosion. And if we don't realize we're at the brim, that's when we scream, cry, fight, get mad, get angry, withdrawal, right? We have to realize we're getting close to the explosion. For me, just like you, Katie, like I am angry. Like I am a mad, angry person.
And my poor family, I control it really well, like at work or in public, or you know what I mean? But like, I actually control it really well with my kids for the most part. It's my poor husband that bears the brunt of it. So sorry, Bart.
I know. In my house, my husband is like a duck on the water, right? Like cool, calm, and collected, feet underneath the water are just paddling away, right? And I'm the opposite. I am like a raging lunatic to other people, to him, right? Mostly. And then I'm like, okay, I feel better now. Like go along with my merry way. Right after I, explode at him. We have to start to identify what it feels like within us when we realize we're getting close to that explosion. So for me, I get hot, like my neck gets hot and I feel tension in my ears and my jaw and my head. And that's when I know like I am about to lose it on somebody. So just identifying like when are we getting close to that explosion, then we can do something to cool down, to walk down the mountain, to circumvent the volcano, however you want to think of it. But that has to be an intentional thought. Our body serves us up this adrenaline, like, oh, you need to solve this problem. Here's a burst of energy. And then we get 35 in a row. But the cooling down has to be intentional. We have to intentionally say, I need to, whatever, go touch grass, as the youth say now, right? I need to go take some deep breaths or go exercise or go stretch or do something to calm myself down. We have to intentionally do that, okay? Because our body does not do that. Our body's natural inclination is for that volcano to explode. That's how we survived all this time, right? And thank God we did, right? Because the people who don't have that burst of energy didn't have the energy to like fight for their family and find food and protect themselves. But modern day problems don't require that much energy, right? Like me calling the wood chipper guy didn't require energy.
Like going back to like, this is an uncomfortable situation, but I'm not being chased by a tiger. So I don't need as much adrenaline as what would be required to outrun a tiger. But I think for me, like the problem is it seems like sometimes when we've been talking about this, like I get stuck in this cycle where it's like, okay, I could maybe calm down for like 5 minutes here, but it's just going to happen again. Like my volcano is still so full. And sometimes I start the day and the volcano is already almost spilling out, and that's when like, I wonder, is that less stress and more like an anxiety or depression, like disorder or, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that brings up the next point, right? How do we know when like it's starting to become an issue, right? And so for me, I was 9 months postpartum. I had some crazy postpartum thoughts with my first baby, but it passed relatively quickly. And with my second baby, I didn't. But then it was just like, I feel like my anxiety and depression is getting in the way of my life, and finding tools to manage it is exhausting. And I was like, I need meds. Like, I need medication. And that's exactly what I did. Like, I was doing all the tools, I was exercising, I was journaling, I was doing what I knew I should. I did therapy. And by the way, every single person should go to therapy. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I could talk in depth for days about how to find a good therapist. But anyway, but I was like, it's time. I need meds. And so I talked to my doctor, and she was like, oh, actually, you have severe anxiety, mild depression, and severe ADHD. And I was like, wow, what?
And I do take medication too. I will say I have tried therapy twice in my life, and I don't think either was a really great fit. And I have that, like, the idea of trying a new therapist and finding a new one that I like that sort of thing. That feels like a tiger to me right now. But I did just adjust with my psychiatrist, adjust my medications a little bit, and it has been improving my anxiety. So I will say one thing that I've learned from my experience and with my kids is that sometimes you need the medication first before even therapy. A lot of people, I feel like, think therapy is the first step and then medication is only if it's too hard, if the therapy doesn't solve the problem, which I think for some people it can. But I also think some of us get to one end of the spectrum so quickly or for so long that, like, therapy is not going to be as useful as it would be combined with medication.
Particularly for people who have a complicated relationship with talking about their feelings for whatever reason. Oftentimes it's because of how they were taught to talk about their feelings, right? So particularly for people who have dealt with parents who were emotionally immature, abusive, addicted to something, things like that, right? That is really difficult for those people to do things in that order. It's that order because of our insurance system. So don't let that fool you into thinking you have to do one before the other, right? That's just the rules of insurance. But many farmers are paying for cash no matter what because they have these super high deductible insurance plans. So if that's the case, do what your gut tells you. If you're like, I need meds today, right? Then that's fair. You can go to your family doctor and get meds. And that's what I did. And then later I went to therapy and dug through a mess of childhood emotions and all that stuff, which was a lot of fun and sorted out a lot of issues for me. But that's a really good point, Katie. I'm glad you brought that up. Like, just because that's what our insurance companies say does not mean it has to go that way.
I want to respect my kids' privacy, but 2 out of my 3 kids have dealt with anxiety and depression to the point that they needed medication also. And that's a really hard decision about, you have to weigh the pros and cons and the risks and things like that. But I can say that medication has, especially for one of them, saved their life. So I always encourage people to give it a try. I feel like there's some badge of honor of being able to manage it without medication. And I don't know who's awarding that prize because I don't think that there is one necessarily, especially, like I said, when farmers, we have these aspects of living and working on a farm that people who live in town and work in an office, maybe they do need to make an intentional effort to get outside and things like that. But we have those things built into our lifestyle. Now, on the flip side, you and I were talking before we came on air, there are also things built into our lifestyle that are a detriment to our mental health. Things like the attitude of hard work and never taking a break, right? Maybe in past generations when Sunday was a real day of rest, like that, maybe that was enough to rejuvenate people. But a lot of farmers nowadays don't take that day of rest. They continue to push through because they got a lot to do, right? And you have to work a lot to make a farm work nowadays. Like, I get that too. But what are some of those other things that you see, like, culturally, or that are inherent in our farm families, those attitudes or those behaviors, those habits that are maybe hurting mental health?
Mom does it all, period.
I see that in the farm wives groups all the time. Dad doesn't come in for supper. We don't see dad, unless the sun is down, and mom is taking care of all of it. And for the record, like, you and I have been doing a good job talking about how it's affected us as farm women, because that's a pet peeve of mine when we just talk about the husbands and how we can help. I was at a conference once, a women's conference, and there was a speaker on mental health or stress management on the farm. And I thought, great, because I was a mom with young kids at the time, stay-at-home mom. And the whole session was about how women should help decrease the stress for the men. And I was like, hold up. Like, I know that he's stressed, but that doesn't, like, I am too stressed or too anxious or whatever it is to be able to, I don't have any more from my cup.
I could talk about this for days. This whole idea, right? And it is cultural. The wife does it all, and dad works, and the wife does everything else. And this is so harmful for a number of reasons. Number one, it's harmful for your mental health. Number two, is that really what you want to teach your children? Is that really what you want to teach? Because your daughter is probably going to grow up and maybe she'll marry a farmer, but maybe not. Maybe she'll marry a teacher. And are you still going to want her to do everything and work outside the home and raise the babies and cook the meals and clean the house and do all this stuff? And, oh, yeah, now she's working too and her husband is doing whatever, right? Is that really what we want to teach our children? Do you really want to teach your sons that they don't have to do anything except for work? No. The answer should be no.
I think it's getting better generation by generation. I see that as part of the farm family that I am part of. It's gotten better generation by generation. And I would also say, like, in general, when my husband and I, when he did not farm full time, granted, we didn't have kids then either, but we shared the cooking a lot more and that sort of thing when he wasn't farming full time. And then it seemed like, well, this is the way that it happened. Right at the same time that he started farming full time, we moved out to the farm and we had our first baby all within a few months. And so these roles, we kind of fell into these traditional gender roles. Now, as time has changed, there was a time when I was a stay-at-home mom, and of course I did more childcare. But at the same time, I needed a break in the evening. Like, I needed a break from my little kids, which I know some of you listening are like, whatever. But whatever, that's what I needed. And so my husband would help with that. And then when I went back to work full time, actually, we got into a really great routine because I had to leave with my youngest, with the baby who I was nursing. We had to leave earlier to get to daycare. And my husband had to get our boys who were like kindergarten and third grade-ish on the bus every morning. And now he still manages most of the getting kids on the bus. And that has been 10 years, almost 10 years since then. And so that has helped a lot. But there are still a lot of really traditional things that fall to me and not him. And it's something that we continue to kind of work on. But back to what I was saying about, I love a Facebook group. It's kind of a joke. I love Facebook. And so the Farmers Wives Facebook groups, I feel like almost every day there is somebody posting, how do you deal with this when your husband is working nonstop and he's never in the house and you have to handle all, and you never get a break and you never get to see this person that you love and you married because he was your best friend, and probably before kids or before the farm, he probably helped decrease your stress level by being close to him. And now he's not there, I feel like that is just so prevalent. And there's a lot of women that are like, this is the way it's supposed to be. You just have to suck it up and deal with it,
I think that there's a lot of women who are okay with that and are built for that. And that's okay. I am not one of them.
Maybe it's our special combination of ADHD, anxiety, and mild depression, but I am not built for that either. Okay. So.
Also, I am a person who has successfully transitioned from that person to now my husband does all the cooking, not when he's in the field, but we have this routine. He cooks dinner every single night, the end. And we do have to have this kind of like end of fall, end of spring, like, okay, I've been picking up the slack for a lot of things. Now it's your turn to take this stuff back on.
Like, let's make sure that we've gotten into this habit, but let's make sure we go back to like the non-planting and fall, right? Like, routine.
And some of that is like having tough conversations, and some of that's having boundaries, and some of that's having like a set come in the house now.
But do you ever just have a giant meltdown? Because that's what happens in our house is I'm like, we've reached the limit. The volcano explodes. If you don't help me, we're not going to survive.
Yes, exactly. I like really prefer to like switch roles. Like you just go in the house and I'm just going to go outside and do chores and sit by my quiet self and whatever, do something, you know. But you have to come to that realization. And it does not have to be like, especially if you have a husband who's not going to like maybe take that super well. Like it does not have, it can kind of be subtle, right? Mine was really subtle. I just got my husband a new grill and a smoker and a lot of cooking tools and a lot of kitchen stuff. And then I inspired him to go to the grocery store every single week. And then I would send him recipes. And guess who does all of the cooking and the meal planning now? My husband, right? And I think that it does not have to be like mine was at some point, right? In this reset after spring and after fall, that's usually some blowout volcano moment. But like it can be subtle and it can be easy. And I also have convinced him, like, he just throws in a load of wash before he goes to bed. I go to bed before him. I throw in one before I go to bed. He goes to bed and throws one in. Now, what do you know? We're each doing half of the laundry. Like it can be pretty subtle.
What I will say has worked for us over the years. By the way, we will be married 20 years in June. So this is not like, I mean, I won't say that we have like A++ relationship, but like we've spent some time figuring this out, right? It is really hard. My husband might have a touch of ADHD too. It's never been diagnosed, but he's not a great planner. Neither am I. That's one of the things that's really hard about cooking and even handling. We talk about the mental load with raising kids and things like that. And he has a big mental load with the farm. I get that too, you know, but he's not great at planning things. So a couple of things that have really helped for us is that we have, I can't say her name, but we have a robot owned by Amazon. I almost said it. We call her the robot when we don't want to alert her. But we have a robot that keeps our grocery list. And now he goes, I'm not a stay-at-home mom, so I don't go on parts runs and things like that. So when he goes on parts runs, he stops at the grocery store and he has a very clear, up-to-date every second, because we all add to it as we need it. There's a list that he can shop from, and that has helped a ton. The second thing, we've got 3 kids. There's a lot of kid paraphernalia coming into the house all the time. It's Easter basket. He is not good at deciding this is where we should put these kids' toys. This is how we should organize this. This is where we should store this. This is what we should do with these weird things that they just brought home, party favors from a birthday party. So I do take care of that stuff, but in exchange, he takes care of things that don't require a lot of problem solving in the house. For example, loading the dishes does not generally require a lot of problem solving. My oldest son's job is to unload the dishes, and so he does that every day, and my husband's job is to keep them loaded. And as long as I am doing the bulk of the cooking, that's the way that they are contributing, and it's helping a ton. Now, I do get angry if they get behind on it, and I'm like, guys, it's not that hard. Same thing with laundry. He has a lot of farm laundry. Like, I am not doing his laundry anymore. I'm doing laundry for myself and about 1.5 of the kids that are not big enough to do their own laundry. You know, my oldest son does all of his own. He prefers to just keep it separate and not have to get it tangled up with the rest of us. My middle son is doing more of his own, but I'm like, I'm not doing laundry for a man in his mid-40s. You are perfectly capable of making sure you have clean work jeans to wear.
Okay, so we had mentioned AI earlier, okay, and responsible use of AI. So AI has helped me with just the mental load so tremendously much. Between that and the reminders app in the robot, just being able to say, tomorrow at 4:30, remind me to do this. Tomorrow morning at 7:30, remind me to take beef out of the freezer so that we have thought out meat for supper, you know? And it's stuff like that like, you get so behind on it. It's all these little things. And like, your life can be so much simpler if you're able to use these tools. And I know that they're not for everybody, and some people don't feel comfortable, and that's fair. Also, if you are looking to simplify your life, play around with that just a little bit. And with meal planning and grocery shopping and budgeting, even cleaning, like somebody was telling me that they take a panoramic picture of their house that's just trashed, and then like AI, ChatGPT will just tell them how to clean, in what order, and what makes the most sense. And like, oh my, because that's what I need, right? I get analysis paralysis. I've already worked a 10-hour day. I cannot make another single decision. If somebody says, start this first, do dishes first, pick up all this shit, throw it away. And it has helped the mental load tremendously.
Sarah, you and I should just start a new podcast where you and I just share tips. Because here's my, like, again, let me share something I've learned over the 20 years. Back when I was a mommy blogger, I had a blog post about this, actually, and this is how I clean my house. Always start with garbage, okay? So I just go through with a giant garbage bag. I always start with garbage. Then I do food and dishes related things. My kids are always leaving a glass of water somewhere. There's always, like, this, if I was still doing all the dishes and things like this would be second on my list. Right now, I just make sure it all gets to the kitchen so that my husband and oldest son can deal with it. So garbage, food related things. The third one is clothing. So that is, you know, the socks that the kids have left on. I know my kids are pigs. Like, I get it. They all have ADHD too. Sorry, guys. But the socks that they've left all over the floor, the sweatshirts that have been discarded by random doors. So garbage, food, clothing, and then we have toys and general clutter. And my argument has always been that if somebody showed up at my house at any, you know, unexpectedly, I could make an excuse for like the toys on the floor. That's one thing. But it's hard to make excuse for Cheez-It wrappers or garbage, you know, like that sort of thing. So that's always been my order of operations. When it's really bad, I will set a timer for 5, 10, or 15 minutes, and I will just do one room at a time in that order. Because then at the end of that time, you can see a visible difference in that room, and it gives you just enough push to like keep going. I don't know how we kind of transgressed from talking about mental health to talking about strategies for us to manage our own homes and things like that. But like, they are tied together, because when my mental health is poor, my house becomes more overwhelming. And when my house is more overwhelming, it impacts my mental health. It really does. I also outsource cleaning. I have somebody that comes for 4 hours twice a month and does the things. Like, I still have to clean before she comes. I have to deal with a lot of clutter. This is when I do my garbage bag and my clutter and making sure everything's ready for her. But then she deals with the vacuuming and the floors and the toilets and the shower. And like, that way I can save my energy for the things that take more energy. Like, one of these days I'll clean off my desk. I could tell you there are Valentines on my desks. It's April 22nd. There are Valentines on my desk. There's a Christmas gift that my daughter gave me. There's like all sorts of things.
I hear you. I was going to say outsourcing things, whether that is paid or unpaid, or a little trade with a friend, or a little whatever, barter with the neighbor kid, like, especially for those people who feel like they are drowning with no help, like, find something, someone from church, like, trade with another mom, just a night of the week that you can just have some time. Like, that will give you will fill your cup so tremendously much. And there's a lot of creative ways that you can do that for free or for cheap, or just pay for it. You know, it's well worth it.
When I was a stay-at-home mom, there were a couple of other neighbors that had kids around the same age, and we would go to each other's houses and help with projects and things like that. And we would also watch each other's kids so that the other people could get work done. But sometimes it was fun to work side by side. So, you know, that's why we would just haul everybody to one location and work together. It made a huge difference. Plus, having that camaraderie, that friendship, like, that is good for your mental health too. So Oh man, Sarah, I wish that we could keep talking, and maybe our listeners will let us know if they want to hear more episodes about this type of topic. Normally we talk about marketing, but this has been a little bit different. And I think, I'm glad that I reached out to you. It was partly because my mental health has not been great lately. It's a lot better this week because I started my new medication a week ago and it's already starting to have some effect. But I think this time of year, we're getting so busy. A lot of our farmers are getting ready for farmers market season, plus all the spring things that are happening on the farm. So it's a really timely topic as well. So, Sarah, I know you said you don't have any fresh new episodes of your podcast lately. Can you point everybody to where they can find the old episodes, though? Because those are a treasure trove of information as well.
Yes, absolutely. So I am the Throwing Wrenches, Mending Fences podcast on all the platforms. And I have a ton of YouTube videos specific to farmers' health. So YouTube's a great place to find videos and, of course, the podcast and all that stuff.
Throwing Wrenches, Mending Fences. I just want to say that more slowly for people so they can find you again. So, okay, awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Katie. This was great. So fun.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Meat Success. We hope this episode gave you fresh insights and inspiration to beef up your meat marketing. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, follow us on social, and share with your fellow farmers and butchers. Have questions or ideas for future podcasts? Reach out to choplocaluniversity.com. Until next time, remember, there's more than one recipe for meat success.